What's up, everyone? Today's episode, we talk about our future games being priced at $70, how and why this might be happening, and what our thoughts are for the change. Enjoy the show with today's cocktail, The Last Word. Check out our show description for more info. What's up, guys, and welcome to a new episode of the Drunken Guardian podcast. I'm your host, the Drunken Guardian, and today we got Danny back to the show. What's up, Danny?
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Today we are going to be talking about some news coming up recently about the pricing of video games. Me and Danny had a previous discussion on a previous episode about whether they should raise prices on video games or not. And we are getting some news that some games, not all, will be about $70. We'll get into that later. But real quickly, we have a quick topic we want to talk about was ads in video games. I don't know if they're getting worse. I wouldn't say they're getting worse, but there was a report about the new UFC game where during the instant replays that they were throwing ads to people, and it did not get a very good response. So EA eventually pulled that out of the game. Danny, what were your thoughts on ads in video games just as a whole? And of course, then what about UFC?
I think the UFC is the exception where I don't really notice it. I mean, obviously the UFC was the big smack that threw in your face there. I shouldn't see what they're trying to do. They're just trying to replicate the UFC, and that's what UFC does. If you watch UFC fight, which I do, they don't have a lot of ads, promotions, things like that anymore because they tend to go like this Reebok model, which is nobody's allowed to put ads on their trunks anymore. You only can have trunks by Reebok. Reebok's the only main sponsor. If we have a few more, it's ours. That's it. And usually it's only like one or two other people. And when whoever the one or two other people is, then they in that instant replay like that, they show it really big whenever they do an instant replay. Instant replays aren't, it's not like wrestling. Instant replay doesn't happen in the middle of a match, or it's not like football where it's like you see the sort of pixel and the fight's going on the bottom. It's at the end of the match. Yeah. Or every round, I should say. They showed us the replay, so it's not really that big of a deal. It's an aspect that you don't really pay too much mind to it, that it's in your face.
I guess it's kind of because you're like kind of used to the whole UFC style, the way they do it in actual television.
Yeah, and again, they because it's a game and they try to replicate the way it looked. Yeah, it looked like it was smack dab in the face, or it looked silly, but that's what they do. Most movies tend to they all have advertisement in it, Coke can, somebody drinking a can of Coke, the label's always faced out just perfectly so you can see the entire label, whatever it is. And games are no exception, and they have ads throughout the whole entire thing. And they're all subtle, you don't realize it. It's more subliminal. Right. And just to get that extra revenue, I'll just say they put your stupid, rock star drink or whatever it is in the game. I guess it only becomes bad as if, they make the ad more of
intrusive.
In the game, but they don't really do that. And so I don't really see it as that big of a deal in games. Like until you mentioned that UFC thing, and they haven't paid mind that there are any ads, and I went, think back, okay, yeah, I guess they are. And some game developers don't need to, you're not gonna see that in Ghost of Tsushima unless it's something Japanese, because it obviously doesn't fit. But if you're doing an EA game that's about sports, and sports is about sponsors, like sponsors link to players, and players have to have their sponsors, then yeah, you're gonna have ads in the game. Every now and then you'll see a little guy with a Red Bull or something. It's okay, it's kind of real life. So if you have that ad, and it's not that big of a deal anyway. I mean, it's supposed to be a parody of real life, a Resident Evil type game, like real people doing real situations, drinking. You see a Coke machine in the back. It's no big deal. It's a Coke machine.
Yeah. It didn't bother me either much to hear this type of news because it's exactly what you said. Like it kind of just makes you feel more immersive into what you would typically see in a UFC, an episode of UFC on television. It would be more of a problem if it was more intrusive towards like crazy games that you mentioned, like Ghost of Tsushima or playing Spider-Man or stuff like that. Even in Spider-Man, like I could understand some ads, like billboards on the walls and stuff like that, or like
because it's New York City, so
right,
you're traveling outside of New York City. It's a great chance to put an ad, gain Rex revenue. It's real life. It makes it look more realistic. Nothing's worse than why have a fake ad.
right?
Like, unless the fake ad is for a purpose of driven storyline, like they're promoting,
the Avengers or something. Yeah, Daily Bugle's good. Yeah,
fine, that's different. Fine, you use the fake ad, but why do a fake Coke can, giant Coke billboard, when you can say, "Hey, we have your game. We were playing as it, and part of this game, there's going to be a section where they destroy a billboard. We want that to be Coke. Pay us." Why not? The ways of making more money. Why not? And it's got more power to them.
Do you think that maybe the fact that it was an EA game kind of made things the wrong way, because people have this bad image of EA already, so they kind of just find reasons to basically complain about it because it's EA.
EA is very money hungry, and they're not afraid to say it. I mean, most companies are the exact same way as EA. They just don't flock to the way EA does. EA goes, "I know you're going to pay $70 for my game, which we'll come into later, because you have to. Fuck you." Like they outright say it, and that's total attitude towards everything. They go, I know you're going to have to watch this ad. You know what? Because we made this. It's just the way they do things. So, and people don't like that. But I bet $1 million if another company made a different sports game. Granted, I can't name any other companies that make sports games right now, but any other company made a sports game, did the same exact thing, do it in the middle of the screen. Nobody would pay no mind. They would be like, "Oh, look how real it is." Just like that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree with all that. So hopefully EA learns from that and they don't shove some ads down people's throat. I hope that's not the future of gaming in general, because we're going to get towards the whole, cost of video games again, and how expensive it is to create these games, and all these companies are trying to penny pinch and make as much money as possible in any way possible. So, I guess we could just segue straight to that. It's been announced after the PlayStation finally been announced with the pricing and the release date that some of the games, such as Demon's Souls, Destruction All-Stars, and the Miles Morales game, are going to be $70, $69.99, whereas the original Spider-Man game, or like the new Sackboy game that's coming out, that's going to be $50 and $60 respectively. So I guess these prices are kind of going to be everywhere, and I would assume it's based off of a couple of factors like popularity, production costs, production value, things like that. So what do you think now about this news about the new pricing in games?
I truly don't believe. I know a lot of people think, "Oh, these games cost more to make." I don't believe that's their main reason and why they would put a bigger price tag. We said it before. EA has a game that they release every single year that has no real microtransactions. It kind of don't. I'm not gonna have really play too much, but there's not much you can really do in a football game. You play the game, you have fun. Next year there'll be a new one. There's not going to be a DLC for fucking Madden, whatever. There's not going to be a new costume that you have to, pay $20 for. There's none of that. So they're going to make that $70. So you got to think about in that aspect of, and that's what we said before. That's what they're going to make those games $70. Now a new game like Demon's Souls, same exact thing. The Demon's Souls game, there's not going to be DLC to that because you can't make DLC to a remastered game. There's not going to be custom armor. I think it's defeats the purpose of. You're not going to do a pay to win type of thing on that. And
you mean there wouldn't be microtransactions?
Yeah, there are no microtransactions.
Yeah,
and that I think is again what is going to be the factor of how can we make biggest bang of our buck from this game? Oh shit! Okay. This is just a remastered. Yeah, it looks great. It is great, whatever. But thinking to do the EA model, which is okay, we're going to charge $70 because we can't make money in this is just a one-time big bang buck, make our money, we're done, on to the next game.
What do you think about the Miles Morales game? I mean, Sony had already gone and said that this is essentially like a solo expansion of the Spider-Man game. It wouldn't be as long as the original Spider-Man game. So how do you think they're justifying that a game? I would guess, anyways, this is my guess, is either like half the size or 3/4 of the size of the original game, and yet they're going to charge you more than the original price.
Honestly, that's the one I didn't know about, that one, that they're charging you $70 for that.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me, none of that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
It just, for me, it just feels like it's just pure greed from who's the publisher?
Well, so I think so. Sorry, because I did leave something out about the Miles Morales thing. So I'm not sure how much the Miles Morales game will cost solo. The Miles Morales game, the Ultimate Edition, will be $70. So because that includes
that makes sense.
The game too.
Well, then that makes sense though.
Okay.
If you're paying for a game plus an add-on, that just makes sense that it should be $70. I mean, that's everything. Every game is like that. Like if you're paying for Destiny right now, you buy Destiny. You don't buy Destiny. I think the original might be free, but you don't buy Destiny for $59.99. You buy Destiny plus the season pack plus this plus that. Like, so to be just $70 for the entire first Spider-Man game, which is being able to resell itself, which hasn't done in the past. I mean, which is a great way of reintroducing itself back to the market.
Right.
Plus the expansion, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, you're basically paying for a $59 game. You're paying $10 more for an expansion everybody wants. So that makes sense. Now, if they said that you had to buy to get the Miles Morales game, you had to rebuy this Ultimate Edition, yeah, that would be horrible. But they're not doing that. What I heard, if you have it on the PlayStation 4, because it's coming out for PS4 and PS5, and so if you have the PS4, you'll be able to still play it on the PS4 and then transition it for free to the PS5. The justification of I think that the motto is $59.99 still to this day, no matter what, no matter how expensive, crazy the game is, because there's a few things that are going on. Most games are going into more of these multiplayer. A lot of companies believe that multiplayer is key. That's why you get games like Godfall, Avengers, the new Batmans that are coming out. They're all multiplayer. And when you have a multiplayer game, you're allowed to put in more microtransactions that are hidden. You're going to be buying costumes because you want to look better than the people you're playing with. You're going to be buying DLC because hopefully that game does well and warrants more add-ons to keep you interested in playing the multiplayer game, because that's the only way you can have a multiplayer game that's actually successful is if it's constantly growing, the World of Warcraft model. So, and if that's the case, then your game is $59.99. Everybody's fine and buying that, but people don't realize that the price of where they're making their money is in these horrible microtransactions that do not cost developers any more money than it did to make the game. So, like, biggest example, Marvel's Avengers right now, no matter how much money it costs them to get all the copyrights and all the games, if you want a costume, you basically have to pay $20. If you buy any one of those things to try to really get like one of the costumes, they cost you $20. Now, how many people bought this game right now and paid the $20 to get an extra costume?
So I understand the microtransaction thing, how that can help lower costs of the game while them still making some good revenue. How do you justify games like Demon Souls or Destruction All Stars coming out at $70? Because those, well, maybe Destruction All Stars, since that is a multiplayer game, like you said, I could see that being maybe with microtransactions. We barely know anything about that game. But for example, like you mentioned, Demon Souls, there's not going to be much to that game other than the actual core game itself. So how do you justify it being $70?
Because the reason, no, again, it's the EA, it's the 2K model where there are no microtransactions. There's not going to be a DLC. There aren't going to be anything extra add on that we can make money off of. So we're going to put and this is a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. We're not making Demon's Souls 2 remastered. Hopefully not. Anyway,
well, there isn't one. But I know what you mean, like Dark Souls.
Dark Souls is the next one after. But that's there is no Demon's Souls 2, so there is no sequels to remaster. It's just going to be a one-time thing that comes out this year. That's it. It's done. Come January, people are going to forget about it. Granted, I think it's still
too much.
Too much for a remastered game. This makes sense if it was if it was a brand new game and then this is what it was. Like if you told me Last of Us 2 cost $70, I'd be like, that makes sense. Because again, the days of themselves, there is no, which I think there is DLC coming out, but anyway, but they don't really plan on doing DLC. They didn't plan on doing microtransactions. There is no way else to make money. They just want to make it. So if they made a game like that, $70, again, it does make sense to do that. But it doesn't make sense to have a multiplayer aspect that's going to try to catch you in all the DLC and get all your money elsewhere. Where those games can make way more money by doing so. It's almost like the world. It's actually the biggest example is MMOs for PCs, right? Mm-hmm. Diablo. What was the
Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft?
All those games gave their game away for free, and they said, we're going to give you the game for free because the first taste is free. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The first taste is free, but once you get hooked, we know you're going to buy the microtransactions in that game. You're going to buy the new content that we come out with every 6 months. And you're going to pay $40, $50 for the new expansion. And so you're going to make your money way over, even though the game is free. So a $59.99 is already the cost of games. We already have it in our heads psychologically that is the cost of games. So if you have left at that, you pay that, and that's it, you're done. Then you can entice them with those transactions that don't really cost you that much to do. They really don't. Like game development, how much time, effort, the money is put into the game, you are not putting that much extra time and effort to put a microtransaction in there. Because you're doing it as part of the game. And you're going to make way more money than the $70. Because you are. I mean, it's ridiculous. I couldn't believe when I saw the cost of the microtransaction in Avengers. It's $20 to get one costume
for like an emote. Even it's crazy. That's why I avoided the store altogether. I'm not even going to grind for this stuff because it's just hard to grind for the resources to buy it straight up from the game.
But if the game was, and again, and it all comes down to if your game is done properly, you will make the most money. Now, if they keep adding, because not all MMO games start off great. Things like this start off great. Destiny 1 wasn't a great game when it first came out. It was fun, and people saw, I see the potential in this, but it wasn't great. And Marvel's, to me, it's the same thing. I see the potential. I see what they do if they choose to continue with it.
I mean, Destiny was out for Destiny 1 was out for maybe 2 years before they started with microtransactions. They introduced that Eververse program. How do you feel? I mean, so the whole microtransaction system makes sense again for making that extra money. So what also do you think about just brand new games in general, like new IPs, for example? Well, actually not a good example. I'm trying to think of a single player game because I was going to mention something like Godfall, for example. Let's just pretend that Godfall, Looper, or not Looper, Deathloop.
Deathloop, whatever I call it, Looper.
Let's say Deathloop was not multiplayer, no microtransactions whatsoever. It's a brand new IP that's where like the industry is still unsure that it'll be popular or not. Do you think that would warrant them a $70 price tag so they can make sure they get their money if it doesn't do well?
But it depends on what their motto is going to be. Like, if Looper goes, okay, we are creating this game, it's going to be $70, but we have no plans because we have trust that our game is fun, but it's only limited fun. Like, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can only make money off of transactions and DLC if it's more than just limited fun.
Okay, so you're saying, like, even if they have future plans like DLC and microtransactions in the future, like, it shouldn't be $70
because they plan on
making more money.
Making more money with the DLC. That all the groundwork is done. The money they put into the groundwork is the majority of it. You know.
Well, here's the thing with that, though. The thing is that for it to be a new IP, sure, you can make plans for DLC or microtransactions in the future, but what if it doesn't do well? Then what if your plans fall through and you don't end up making that content?
But the whole point is, if you've done your game right, I mean, there's the whole purpose of when they develop these games is not just to hope they have a hit. Is when it's developed, when it's come out, it's all part of marketing. It's all part of, you know, you've done your job while making sure that they've done the research to show that this game is going to be a great game. It's going to come out. Just like movies, you know, movies don't come out. Games just not like.
I mean, I disagree with you there, because there are lots of games that came out that got a lot of hype, and this is years and years and years of us playing games. Plenty of games had lots of hype, and some of them bombed tremendously.
And okay, so there's a great example of that is Anthem, right? Okay, Anthem came out, everybody bought it. Also, everybody paid tons of money for the skins and costumes and microtransactions. They made a buttload of money. They made way more money than they would have otherwise, right? They made way beyond their expectations, probably.
Yeah.
Or maybe they met their expectations. The game bombed, so they can no longer make more money. And future, if they come out with a DLC right now that costs $40, nobody would buy it.
But that's my point. That's my point. Like, yeah, Anthem almost pretty much made their money back because of those microtransactions and all those people buying that stuff, hoping that the game will start picking up, such as what Destiny did. They eventually pick up and hopefully they do good, which they didn't. But the microtransaction isn't the part of the example or the point I'm trying to make. My point is that, you know, games like Anthem that were so hyped up, for example, like Deathloop is actually getting some good feedback from people, but what if that game does bomb? So are you going to slap that $70 price tag to try to get as much money as you can? Or are you really that confident that it will do well and you sell it for $60? Like, you can't always be 100% sure that it'll be a AAA, a highly sold game.
Yeah. But what I think you don't realize is, when was the last time you actually played a bad game?
Lots of games. I mean, No Man's Sky was, it was the fucking second coming of Christ when No Man's Sky was coming out. Like, I couldn't wait for that game to come out, and I wanted the majority of the people who bought that game asked for refunds. You've never heard of, like, the majority of the population asked for refunds for that game, even online version.
When did that game come out?
5 years ago, maybe?
Okay, and they're still making DLC and they still have a cult following to this day.
Yes, but that's because they added DLCs little by little because of how bad it did. But that's still not my point.
My point is that games, just like everything else, goes through a filter. Mm-hmm. Not every game that's in development comes to fruition to your PlayStation, to your Xbox.
Exactly.
They go through tons and tons of marketing, research, filters before. But
even that fails. That's what I'm saying. Even that fails as well.
Yes, sometimes every now and then, but not often. Most games that you've seen come out or seen produced and are upcoming for PlayStation 5 or whatever it is, those games have been games that have been tested multiple ways from fucking Sunday, that they know this game will make the money that is before it gets to our console. There aren't many games that come out with that $59.99 that doesn't make. I'm not saying there's none. I'm not saying there's like 100% none. course, there are the handful, but it's very less because they had, as part of that $150 million research, before you even get to that point, before you get up to, okay, this is going to cost this much money, they have to know that the concept of what the game that they're making is going to work. That's what makes the developers great developers, you know?
Well, I mean, still, you can't put a price on a game because of how you hope the game will work, just because you put in all this money for marketing.
But again, they've done the research. They do the research. You know, okay, Demon Souls, we know is going to sell. You know, they've done the research. They saw the test footage. They saw the test, whatever it is. You know, chances are good there are 100 different type of games. Just like God knows how many Soul Reaver games that are probably in the works of being remastered or redone and retold right now. Because you always hear those rumors. Same thing with Twisted Metal. God knows how many Twisted Metal games there actually are in development that aren't making it to this point.
Mm-hmm.
But if it does, if it gets to the point and they go, we got it. This Looper is going to be the next game. We've done all the research. This is what it is. But in our research, we realize we're not going to be able to make much money. We can't put much transactions into this game. If this game is very story-driven, you fucking kill the guy, you're done, you overtime loops, whatever. We can't do anything else extra. You know, end of this story ends. If you beat this game, this story ends. There's nothing else you can do. We can't really make we can't make DLC off of this. They've done the research. They go, fuck, how do we make the most money off this game?
I feel like you can really make a DLC for pretty much anything if you're motivated enough to get the most money out of it. Like it may not be appropriate for the game because there are some game developers out there who feel that microtransactions or DLC kind of dilute the story that they're trying to tell, or the gameplay for that matter. So maybe they decided on it for other reasons, not because they simply can't fit it into the game. They can't think of anything for the game. You can pretty much make microtransactions for anything and everything. I mean, there are people in the Xbox 360 who bought a fucking armor for a horse, you know, and you can buy armor and weapon skins and everything, you know, to the sky's the limit with the things that you can buy. Like I feel like there are other reasons why they didn't put that kind of stuff in the game, excuse me.
Like again, and that's all part of their strategy. That's going to be their strategy towards. They don't want to make DLC. They choose not to make DLC. They choose not to put microtransactions. Therefore, we're going to put the $70 price tag on it. We're going to develop this great game, become a new standard in gaming, the next EA, the next Idols, whatever it is. But we want to base it off this Looper game, right? And that's just an example of whatever it is, but that's their choices. If Final Fantasy VII had chose to make it $70, everybody would have bought it because there is nothing extra being added. But they don't have to because they know Final Fantasy is split up into 16 fucking parts, or however many parts the game is going to be. Each one of those, $59.99. You know, the groundwork's already there. Most of the work, most of the development, it's already intact. So you're gonna make your money back, and they know they're gonna make their money back, which they did a million times over.
With things going on with the game industry, with technology rising and stuff, because we've had this debate before. Like, do you not think that the $70 is more justified just because we need to actually pay these game developers a lot better now, and the budgets on these games are so high that they have to raise the price because they need to make up for that money? They need to get that money back somehow?
No, because then they wouldn't be.
Because by your logic about the whole microtransactions and everything, if they really felt like they needed to get their money's worth, they could have shoved Demon Souls with a bunch of microtransactions, and they could have made up some DLC. Because of the fact that it's a remake, they still could do whatever they want because it's also by a different company. The Demon Souls rights were lost for a long time, which is why we hadn't seen a remake for a long time. So now we finally have it, and it costs $70. I feel like it's more because of the technology, not because they're trying to get as much money as they can from us.
It definitely is because they're trying to get as much money as they can from it because they know that this game is going to be a quick cash grab. And it is. It's a pure cash grab. People aren't playing this game. If this game was to have come out right now and there never was a history of these games, if they didn't make its name for itself and it just came out, people wouldn't buy it. You know,
so this is
a brand new IP. If this game was a brand new IP, they put the same amount of time and energy in developing this game. People had no clue what it is, and they would never, for the original Dark Souls game, original Demon Souls game, they would have never made it $70 and make it so high price on a risk because the original game was a risk.
So with the new IP games that are coming out for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox, so those things, I can guarantee you some, if not all, are going to be $70, whether they be single player or multiplayer. So like, would you be surprised if that happens? Because I won't.
I would be surprised if they made all games $70. Yes, I think the industry standard.
I think that's what it's going to be. That's what I'm trying to say. It's going to be $70. I can guarantee you that. It's just going to take some time. We talked before about the game developers. They usually need some time to get used to the new systems. So usually in about 2 to 3 years, we'll probably see better quality games. I can guarantee you by that time, everything will be $70.
But I don't believe that. I believe that they're going to see more ways of them trying to hide the extra funds. You know, they're going to try to come up with other ways of hiding that.
For sure.
Putting the microtransaction and putting the DLC. I mean, those are our go-to things to say because those are the ones we know right away. But they're going to develop those methods in making that because there's, again, it's already been.
I'm sure they'll find ways to put ads in video games in more discrete places, you know, just like we talked about before, to make money.
Same exact thing. That's the same exact thing. It's their way of making money. How can we make money? Okay, we put an ad in this for the game. All right, then we make more money that way. If you go away from that method and you keep trying to do $69.99, $69.99, I think your price tag, your sales are going to drop eventually because people are going to go, I'm not paying $70 for a game. Or
absolutely.
Like a parent is going to say, I'm not paying $70.
I don't doubt that if the demographics are vocal enough about this problem that games are $70, I don't doubt that they would be more careful about pricing things. I'm sure that if enough people said something or just didn't spend the money and bought the games for that matter, that would send a clear message that people refuse to buy games for $70. And yes, absolutely, they would lower the price on that stuff. And honestly, I would hope that is what would happen to keep the costs low, and they can find these other methods to make their money because the consumers is how they make their money.
Which is even how the topic comes up. If nobody would have said anything, and nobody said anything, you realize that nobody's actually said or made a big deal about microtransactions and DLC. They kind of don't.
There are. Are you kidding me?
It's almost like, but it's almost
the whole
expected.
Stuff with EA going on with Star Wars.
Well,
EA
is different. Everybody hates EA. You know, EA's way down.
They still clearly made microtransactions the forefront of controversy for a very long time. It got to a point where loot boxes were starting to become controversial with games like Apex and it's now even illegal in some places in Europe to use loot boxes in games. That's how serious it's gotten.
But that's kind of my point, is that they've already. Well, yeah, okay, fine. I mean, I'm not saying that DLC is not a controversial topic. I mean, it's always has been. I mean, with more game developers such as EA, it's more than not because they tend to pick on EA, I believe.
Yeah.
Anything they do, trying to make money. Yeah. Because this is not.
They're not the only ones. They're just the ones that.
Well, it's not something that hasn't been done for past 10 years. 10 years ago, when Dungeons and Dragons, more now, because when Dungeons and Dragons first did it, because they were one of the first ones to do it and make the games for free, but have this pay to win system.
We go again, like. it's always fun debating with you. Like, this is definitely something that you can't change my mind on, not like you did in the last episode. Yeah, I try to look at things in the business perspective as well as consumer perspective, and I'm okay with the $70 price tag, to be honest. Yes, it hurts my pocket, but if it does help the industry in some way, in a positive way, then I'm all for it. It's fine. At the same time, I'm also for all of us, all consumers, being vocal about it to hopefully make that change, and hopefully they don't raise the price, so that way you can kind of push them towards finding other solutions instead of trying to get it out of our pockets. So we'll just see about that in the future. Danny, thank you for joining us again. It was fun and interesting listening to your side of this debate. So thanks for joining, and see you in the next episode.
Peace. Have fun.